Okay, Luisa, welcome to See Yourself In.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so excited that you're here. And we'll have to make sure everyone zooms in to see your jacket because you dressed fantastically for today.
Always on brand.
I love it. I love it completely. Okay, so a little over a year ago, I had the opportunity to get to know Luisa just through networking in Central Indiana. And so I'm really excited for our listeners today to get to hear more about your story. You shared with me beforehand that you're originally from Mexico City. So let's start at the very beginning. How did you get to Indiana?
Yeah, so proud immigrant. I am originally from Mexico City. My dad was a lawyer in Mexico, so he had the honor of traveling back and forth with one of his artists, and so that's how he got to know America. In one of his many ventures, he landed in Chicago, and at that point, my cousin was living in Indiana, and he was like, "Indiana, like, what is it? Like, there's only corn. What's there?" And so that led him to visiting Indy, and he realized just what an amazing city it was. It was clean. The Hoosier hospitality was real. And so after, a couple of months, my parents decided to make the ultimate sacrifice. And my dad was like, you know what? Things in Mexico are getting rough from the pollution, from, crime rate. And I want a better life for my kids. So my dad sacrificed his career and said, this is it. But of course, like every immigrant story that you hear, we're going to move to America for 6 months, and then we'll move back to Mexico. But little did my dad know just what he was about to uncover and just what a journey it was going to be, not only for himself, for his family. And so he ultimately made the move first. So he moved here to Indianapolis. And then shortly after, my mom and I followed. And at that point, I was about 5 years old. So prime age to start school here. And then I have three older sisters, and then the two oldest started their second semester of senior high school. So, talk about culture shock.
For sure.
Getting thrown into the American school system and learning English and whatnot. And then my oldest sister at that point had already, graduated college. So she was just truly an adult here living. And that is kind of where our starting point was. It was, I did not know any English. All I know is I arrived with a teddy bear in my hand and holding my mom's hand, and I was whipped into just welcome to America. And it was terrifying, to say the least. When I started school, it was the first year that there had ever been an E&L course in elementary school. So you're talking like there were these 5 kids who knew no English. And I'm just looking at these adults like, I can't understand anything.
Wow.
But ultimately it was truly the head start that I needed to get acclimated to learn English. And it's why I'm so thankful that I don't necessarily have an accent when I speak English, but I was able to master English, learn it very well, and still keep Spanish, because that was a big thing at home. Is you're going to speak English at school and figure out how to navigate the world. Yeah. But when you come home, you're going to speak Spanish, because we don't want you to lose that. And as a young kid, you're like, why would I want to be bilingual? Like, why would I want to learn and have 2 languages? But oh my gosh, like I am so thankful my dad stuck with that, because it has opened so many doors just being bilingual and being able to really be proud of who I am and be proud of my background, be proud of where I'm from, because truly it has shaped who I am today.
Well, and we're going to get into all of that, because I think a lot of who you are today and the things that you've experienced have allowed you to make more of an impact in the roles that you hold today. So we're going to get into that shortly, but I'd like to go back. So you've come to the United States, new country. You're the baby of the family. You've gone through primary schooling. You've learned English. Were you even thinking about life after graduation?
No, because I didn't see a life after graduation. I did not see an opportunity, because at that point, being the baby of the family, I had no status here. My sisters had married, and they were off, doing older sister stuff.
That's right.
I felt like a lonely child, but at the same time, they ventured into just heading straight into the career path in terms of just, landing a job. They both landed jobs at Eskenazi, and they've been there since. Since they started Eskenazi, they've been there now 25 plus years. My older sister decided to move back to Mexico, so she's currently back there. But the two of them have just started their careers, and they've made a great living out of working there. And then myself, I was surrounded by my classmates who were looking at scholarships, who were applying for 21st century, and all I kept getting was rejection.
Wow.
Rejection because I didn't qualify for 21st century. I didn't have a social security. I couldn't get a license because, again, I had no status. So I was just like, what am I going to do with my life? Because I just saw these 4 black walls around me, just pure darkness of like, I don't know how to get myself out of here. I'm a great student. I know I have potential, but I have these barriers that I can't seem to jump through, and all these hoops that I have to jump through, and what for? But my dad was saying, there's something's going to come out of it. I promise you, something's going to come out of it. We're going to make it work. I'm not going to give up on you. You can't give up on yourself, because I was like, I'm smart enough. I'm going to figure this out. So when it came down to, actually going through the process of applying for school, and at that time I really only had 2 options. It was either Ivy Tech or IUPUI, mostly because one of the out-of-state tuition cost.
Okay.
Because if you don't have status, you are paying out-of-state tuition, regardless of how long you've been here. You're paying out-of-state tuition, and so when you compare it to tuition from let's say a Purdue or IU, that gets those
pricey,
pricey really quick, right? Because those were my other 2 options, my other 2 choices that I wanted. So I had to be realistic. I said, okay, if I'm going to go to college, I'm going to have to live at home, and I'm going to have to maybe take 1 or 2 courses, and I'm not going to be able to graduate at the rhythm that most of my friends and in my circle is going to do, the traditional 4-year plan. And long and behold, I started college. I got accepted, went to IPY, and I figured out, kind of a little bit of the cheap system. I could take some courses at Ivy Tech.
Okay.
Reduce the cost.
Yep.
And then
transfer the credits.
Yeah. And so I was able to figure out the system, but again, figure it out on my own. It was up to me to figure out. It was up to me to ask the questions, because again, my parents didn't go to college here. They didn't know how to navigate, scholarships. So it was kind of the inner challenge of like, I have to do this for myself because no one else is going to open up these doors. But then that is where the spark got inside of me, and it said, if you don't do this, how many other people behind you are going to feel the same way? So how can you be a role model for other kids, for other students that you may know who may be going through the same similar challenge? And so that was just a constant replay inside my head. I'm like, if I don't do it, does that mean I'm going to limit someone else's opportunity? And during my freshman year, I was able to then get granted DACA, and I was able to get a status. And then one thing led to another, where then eventually I became a permanent resident, which then granted me in-state tuition. And at that point, the windows really opened in terms of scholarships, in terms of being able to apply for internships. And I'm very blessed and very lucky that the timing was just perfect, because it came at a point where that really changed the trajectory of like, okay, how am I going to apply what I'm learning now into the real world, which obviously then can turn into these internships.
Well, and that's where I want to go next. So you probably weren't even thinking about field of study, right? You were thinking about prerequisites and how to pinch pennies and how to get ahead.
Survival.
Yeah. I mean, in the education space. And so let's talk a little bit about, you ended up at IUPUI, which is now IU Indianapolis. How did you land into a field of study?
So when I was in high school, I was set on being a heart surgeon. I was going to go to pre-med. No one can change my mind. I was going to go to medical school. I was going to be a doctor, and that was the end of it. Well, when I started freshman year, one of the few courses, the prereqs were anatomy, chemistry, and bio, and yeah, I quickly found out those weren't my people.
I feel that. Yeah,
I'm an extrovert. I'm social, and just I was not connecting with my classmates, and so took it to my advisor, and I said, look, I'm struggling. I think I've made a mistake. I don't know what I want to do, but this is not it.
Yeah.
And they kind of challenged my thinking of like, and we did the the typical studies, like the DISC assessments.
That's right.
and whatnot, just to kind of analyze.
What do you like?
What do you like? Who are you? What are your passions? And that in turn, they recommended, why don't you think about communications or marketing? I'm like, what kind of job can you get with that?
A fair question as a communicator.
Yeah, same.
Yes.
I'm still asking myself that, right?
Right.
And it was quickly, I was like, you know what? I'll try comm studies. I'll try for a semester, see how it goes. I'll take a course. And then sophomore year, I switched over to comms, and oh my gosh, I like the first class I knew I was with my people. These were people that were social. They were outgoing. They wanted to be in the know of what was happening around the world. They were driven. And not to say that medical students aren't.
Right,
It was a different
apples and oranges.
Yeah, it's a different sense of connecting with people, and through that is how I found what it meant to be a comms major and the opportunities that came with it. Right, from not only public speaking but being creative, being able to plan events. And so this just opened up a whole world of opportunity. But it was truly because of the professors on campus that, were challenged me to think, okay, how, and they were really big on connecting.
Yeah.
So not only, yes, read this textbook, complete the essay, but let me connect you with someone in the field. And that is the beauty of IUPUI or IU Indy is the fact that you are at the heart of downtown. So any sort of connection, any sort of, I want to talk to fill in the blank, you have it right at your fingertips. And so that is how I was able to not only intern at the mayor's office, be able to work at Indy 11 in their inaugural season when they were first,
Wow.
building up a team here. But more so, I started to build my own network in college, which is like unheard of compared to my counterparts, my friends who were, at Ball State, at Purdue, who weren't getting these opportunities simply because they weren't in the spaces where it was happening. And so that is, I think, what really sparked then my notion to just keep trudging along and keep connecting and keep building this net, keep building this circle of people that eventually I know one day I could use them for resources or just to be a sounding board too.
Yeah. I mean, it's a common theme on See Yourself In. It's not just creating the network, it's nurturing the network. And I think you'll talk more about that because today, Luisa, we teased this at the opener, but you serve as the community outreach and fan engagement manager at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which is a global destination for racing. Let's maybe start by talking about how did you land this job and how did you even know to look for it?
Yeah, well, I will be very honest, is I didn't look for it. I never had any intentions of working in sports. I never set a list of like, okay, my end goal is to work at IMS. That was never the goal. I was very lucky that my boss at the time at Indy 11, over the course of the years, had shifted over and was leading marketing over at IMS. And so I kind of kept doing my thing, kept working in marketing, kept honing in on my craft. Had a time at the chamber, and I was doing great. I was loving what I was doing. Pandemic hit. And everything I knew about events, everything I knew about marketing, how to communicate with people, went out the door. And at that point, as we may recall, the race, the month of May didn't happen in May in 2020. The race shifted to August, and in 2020, then Roger Penske had purchased the track. So there was a lot of shifting that, again, unbeknown to myself that was happening, but there was a lot of shifting going on at the track. So because of that shifting, there was an opening of this community role where they were looking at it, really shifting, what the need was. At that point we had launched our Race for Equality, or they had launched the Race for Equality and Change initiative. So there was a big focus on diversity, of bringing new voices to the table, bringing more representation that truly spoke on who the track was, where the track is located, and they needed someone to step in those into those shoes. So my boss from Indy 11 over the years transferred over to IMS, called me one day and said, "Hey, what are you doing? You want to grab coffee?" And that's where he kind of teased the opportunity to, he was, sharing, there's this role coming. It's a community role. You're perfect for it. You are a connector. You are truly a community builder. You care about people. Do you want to come work in sports or in racing? And I'm like, no. Like that, as attractive as it sounds, like it's not like racing. Like I know nothing about racing. Like, why do you want me? And so over the course of the months and weeks that we were talking, now going through the formal interview process, I began to understand the opportunity to represent an organization. Because this is a global spectacle. People from around the world come to see this, and to be in this position where you are you are the person that controls the narrative of how people view the track, of how you are welcoming people, especially as a Latina, as a female. I mean, I told my husband, I'm like, I'm crazy not to take this opportunity because this comes at a heels where all eyes are on IMS between the new ownership, between the civil unrest that were happening around our country, and how IMS was just trying to be a thought leader, and really Penske Entertainment was trying to be a thought leader. And then, I mean, let's not forget to say that I'll be working under a Doug Bowles, an Allison Millington, a Mark Miles, who are just pivotal leaders in our city. And
Sure
so
enough.
for myself, I'm like, I want to learn from those leaders. And so eventually, it worked out that I was able to then start my role and land the job in January of 2021. But simply because of a connection that believed in me, that knew the power that I had, that knew the connections that I brought, but more so they knew the purpose and the passion that I had behind the work that I do.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's really important to pause for a second and just situate the impact of this industry. According to the Indiana University Public Policy Institute, Indiana's racing industry, they provided just shy of 8,500 jobs and had an economic impact of $972 million for Indiana between June 2022 and May 2023. And so that measure of economic impact and job creation, I mean, that enables the state to be propelled forward in so many different ways.
Absolutely. Well, and also it allows us to be connected throughout the state in multiple ways, right? Because we can't do our jobs without all the support and seasonal help from partners to all of our seasonal workers, from all the students that help us put on this spectacle, from yellow shirts. I mean, we depend on this economy to put this event together. It is not just a 250 people full-time staff. Like, it truly takes a village, from our first responders, from our catering, from our AV, and everyone involved. I mean, it takes a village to make this happen. And so the fact that we're able to have that impact in turn and provide people jobs and provide people an income every month of May, I mean, what more could you want?
Well, and again, it underscores the mission of See Yourself In. So if you're listening and thinking, I'm studying finance or human resources, or I'm really interested in technology or workforce development, the IMS has all of those divisions working within the track.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because whenever we get the chance to bring students to the track for a tour and like a Q&A session with leadership, they start the tour typically with like, oh, well, this is kind of boring. Like, I don't really like racing, and this is not what I want to do. Like, this is not interesting. But as soon as you start to talk about all the jobs that are within our oval, from our grounds and landscaping crew to our operations and race control, and then our level 1 trauma center, and then marketing, and then ticketing, the wheels just start turning, and you can just see these students like, oh, like so that means I don't only have to go into engineering. Like, I can actually think about being a nurse and work at the track, or think about being a lawyer and working at the track. So it starts to open up the window of opportunities. And in turn, too, our students who intern with us also have the opportunity to shadow other departments. So just because you're entering as a marketing intern doesn't limit you to go and shadow our legal team. Like, last year, I had an intern who was a marketing intern, but was also going into law school the following year. So you got to spend a day with our legal team. And so, when I tell students, like, don't limit yourself just because you are this major, because you never know how that major can impact an industry you've never even thought about. And it's also why I tell students too, don't stick to just your major. So if you are a sports marketing major, go and intern at a finance company. Go and intern at a landscaping company. Do something that's different, because it's going to expose you to how your degree can apply to other industries. And in turn, you may actually find a passion in finance or whatever. But it's simply just trying things and asking the right questions and being in the right spaces.
Yeah, I love that, because if you're listening right now and you're hearing Luisa's story, you're thinking, but how does this apply to me? And I think you just answered it, plugging into what's going on at the track, plugging into the opportunities and plugging into the programs to start learning where your interests are and then chasing those as opportunities come up.
Absolutely, because you just don't know, and especially here in Indy. I mean, we're called Nap Town, but our city is buzzing from just the Olympic trials that just happened, from the NBA All-Star. There's so many local organizing committees that you can involve yourself in, and that in turn you can be surrounded around these different individuals, and it's partially why I've had much success in what I do, not only professionally, but personally, is because I've been surrounded by the right people, but also people who are also my advocates when I'm not at the table.
That's right.
I'm a big believer that everyone has a place at the table. And if there's not a place, you pull up your chair and you make yourself a space. And also make sure that someone is advocating for you at that table, making sure someone's speaking up for you. There's been multiple times where I was asked to join a board, and I'm always honored when I get asked to join a board. But one of my main questions is, why am I joining you? Why should I join your board? Is it because you're just trying to hit the checklist to have a Latina, to have a female, to have a young professional, or what's in it for me? And then the other thing too, that I think there's been a shift in involvement and how young people get involved is, young people don't have those deep pockets. We're not coming in with able to make a $10,000, $20,000 contribution.
Spot on.
But what we do have is connections. What we do have is willingness to work, is a passion, is being a connector. That is what we're bringing to the table. So a lot of these boards, a lot of these organizations are having to rethink what involvement looks like for these young professionals, because again, they're not going to bring in your big bucks, but they're going to bring you something that's going to be so much more valuable than what you thought. And so when I tell people, the beauty of our city is that you can get connected, you can go as deep as you want, or you can stay as high level as you want, but you have to make the choice to get involved. No one's going to pull you if you're not willing to take the first step and at least introduce yourself to someone new or grab coffee. I mean, that's how I think you and I got connected, right?
Yeah.
This is why we're here.
It is.
But it's just all a matter of having that inner challenge of yourself to just say, I want to do it. I want to be connected. And you just don't know how that can open up a door.
Yeah. Oh, everything underlined and retweeted. That was fantastic. Before we go today, we end every episode asking our guests to share just 3 things that you've learned on your career journey that maybe you would share with people listening who are either just getting started or even looking to maybe try something different in theirs.
Yeah. So I carry these 3 lessons with me, and I tell anyone that I meet for the first time, whether it's a student, it's a working professional, whoever you are. These are like Luisa's life lessons.
No. Love.
So one is build your own board of directors and build it sooner rather than later. This board of directors should include 5 people. It should be an expert in the field, a mentor, a friend, an industry leader, and a sponsor. And those 5 people are going to be basically the people who are going to keep you accountable. They're going to be there to be a sounding board for the good days, for the bad days, for the days you need to celebrate, for the days you just want to learn. Build your board of directors sooner rather than later, because this is the board that's going to keep you moving and keep you going, no matter what challenge, no matter where you're at in your life. Second is be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that is just taking a risk on yourself. Doing an internship that you may have thought you weren't going to land, or apply for the job. What's the worst that can happen? You just get a no. All right, you take that no and then find the yes in something. So always make sure you're doing things that are going to challenge your thinking. Surround yourself with challenging people. Be in meetings. And be present. And then third, I would say is learn how to get stuff done. Be a doer. So I think there's many times that people are really easy or find it really easy to identify a problem, and they can point out, okay, this is what's going wrong in the process, but be the person that steps up and says, I'll get it done. I'll figure out a way. Be the person that gets stuff done, because that is the person that's going to move the needle, not only for the company, but it's going to move yourself up, and people are going to notice that. And people want an attitude of someone who is a doer and will get the job done.
Perfectly said. Before we go today, what's the best way for our listeners to plug into happenings at the IMS or to connect with you?
Yeah, so I am on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, whichever one you want. And then with IMS, really our social channels. We have a great social team. They are always putting out the latest and greatest things that we're doing at IMS, or IMS.com.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
We're so glad that you were able to join us today to learn about Indiana's advanced industries and how you can start or enhance your career journey. Until next time, we hope that you'll be able to see yourself in the unlimited opportunities in Indiana.